Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to the Intercredit Room podcast for episode number 122, in which we are going to discuss the potential of a fake UFO alien invasion. This has been a hot topic in the UFO field for a long time. Obviously, a very important topic with Mr. Skyfall. And I've been reading a lot about this for, a couple years now. I've been really delving into this. And if it was going to happen, if there was going to be a full-on fake alien invasion done with the intention being that mankind would come together to its own rescue, right? That we would then suddenly accept a one world order, if you will. It would all come down to, the selling of it to the public, whether that be the potential of, bio drones that look like grays to Project Bluebeam, this new technology that can basically place images in the sky that look very real. We know this technology exists. But it would, by and large, come down to what people see in person, but also what evidence has been presented. And I'm going to say something that might not be, might not make a lot of UFO enthusiasts happy with me here, but I guess after watching the three films that were released by the Department of Defense, or Tom DeLonge's group, which the truth is they weren't even necessarily released by DeLonge's group, in the sense that those videos have been in certain corners for a while. But what Tom was able to do was to actually bring provenance to the videos, which was the actual news that the Department of Defense said, yes, these are UFO videos. So there was three of them. There was the Tic Tac video, the gimbal video, and the Go Fast. Now, I've watched these videos so many times, guys, so many times. And I gotta tell you, there's nothing visual about this footage of these three videos that is stunning. There's not. I mean, I keep wanting there to be. And what is stunning, is the context, the stories, right? If you hear David Fravor's account of what he saw when he was inside the plane, not what's on video. And it's very important to recognize that what David Fravor says he saw is not what is on video. It's not. He said he saw, the Tic Tac almost bouncing around like it was just firing in different places. And he saw it, on his radar go from like 80,000 feet down to sea level, just above the water, in like a second. Like none of this stuff is in the actual footage. It's just his account. And I'm not saying that he's not a credible, observer. He is. He absolutely is. But it goes back to the same thing. For us to believe that that is alien technology, we're back to the same road we're often led down, which is a person's account. Now, this person is a naval aviator, so that, because he's a trained observer, then that carries more weight, and I think it does. I think it matters. I don't think I wouldn't dismiss what he saw. Put it that way. But even the other videos that you look at, the Go Fast, which is one of the more fun videos of those three, which you just see something that's moving pretty fast across the top of the water, and then it looks like a Wizzo, and basically locks onto it, and he kind of celebrates and says, "Woohoo!" Um, yeah, look, that's probably the best video as far as exciting stuff to watch, but there's nothing you can see there other than a dot that's moving fast, but it's not like the fastest thing in the world. You know what I mean? It's certainly not the speeds that Fravor was discussing. He was saying that this thing took off literally like a bullet. So, like, they have their eyes on it, and the next minute it's gone. It's not even in sight. And then they find out that it was, back at the point at which they took off and rendezvous. Again, fascinating story, but the footage doesn't show that at all. It doesn't. And then I've seen Fravor's explanation of the one video, the DoD video, where you're basically behind some vehicle and it starts to basically turn on its axis and it turns to the side. But what's really interesting, if you watch that video and go back, right when the audio comes on, if you listen closely, you can hear one of the guys say, "Look at that," and then it goes silent, and then it says drone. So they beeped out the F-bomb. Look at that effing drone. And then he says on the video, "Look, there's a whole fleet of them." Again, nothing that is stated in the video or about the experience is what's in the video. We don't see a fleet of anything. We see something that's definitely flying in the air. It definitely doesn't look like just a plane. So, what are we supposed to believe here? I mean, like, what's really interesting to me is what gives these clips so much credibility is the fact that government officials are saying it's a UFO. Which this marks the first time in history that somebody from the government making a statement is supposed to bring validity to the claim. Typically, look, all of us every day, we know that our politicians do nothing but lie to us. They lie about everything, every freaking thing. So if you step back a minute and you say, well, wait a minute. So what ultimately makes these clips real in our minds, it's a combination of two things. One is that the government is saying, yes, it's real, which, again, that should be a reason why we accept it. But the context of the clips, which is spoken about by naval aviators, that is what really makes us believe this has got to be real, right? It's got to be real. Those two things, that's what makes us either believe or want to believe. But if I'm being honest with myself, I'm not sold on those videos. I'm just not. I want to be, I want to be. But I'll tell you one event that is fascinating, and what's even more interesting is that this has resurfaced in the media again, and a lot of people are now talking about it again. That is Oumuamua. If you guys remember, in 2017, there was news stories that appeared about the first interstellar traveler, meaning the first object that came into our solar system from another, was identified, tracked, named, and there was a lot about it that made people really nervous that this might in fact be an alien visitor. It was actually discovered on accident. There was a an astronomer that was working in Hawaii, and he was searching the skies for asteroids that were coming close to the world, basically. And he came across this really bright object that he initially thought was a comet. And after reviewing footage from the previous nights, he realized that this was not your everyday blip in the radar, that this was not even a comet. This was something else, something different. Now, when that first came out, that it could be, an intelligent, extraterrestrial, controlled, commanded, or driven aircraft, what I remember about that is that there was a big rush of people to kind of confirm this and say, yeah, we think this is what it could be. But like always in the media, there was a big rush right after. Basically, thoughts and ideas from skeptics that didn't believe it and wanted to, challenge anyone's findings. And it seemed pretty quickly once that started happening, and there were a few voices that said, no, it's not anything like that. It's just a weird looking comet. It's just an exotic comet, and we don't know. We haven't seen it before. And the fact that it came into our, solar system just means it got flung and hurled from another solar system. And it probably happens all the time. We've just never seen it before. Now, there's a lot of maybes and probablys in that answer. But it went away, basically. And now the story has resurfaced, and there's a lot of networks and online platforms that include news stories about this object because over the last 2 years, a gentleman named Avi Loeb, who is a Stanford professor, took the time to actually study what this Oumuamua is. And keep in mind that initially, he was one of the voices against the possibility that Oumuamua could be an interstellar, alien-controlled technology. Originally, he spoke out against it, but after doing a ton of research on what occurred and getting the flight pattern correct, which if you look at the screen right now, you can see how this thing entered our solar system, where it went, which it basically came in and beeline down, shot around the sun, and as it came around the sun, it picked up a ton of speed and just rocketed, out of there, back into, whatever the next solar system will be. Which after studying this object over the last couple of years and learning what its actual flight pattern was, the fact that it's shines 10 times brighter than your typical comet, the fact that once it spun around the sun and took off, a lot of times the tails of comets will get really long because most comets are made up of primarily ice, and whenever there's any kind of burn off, you'll get these long moisture tails. That did not happen with Oumuamua. After it came around the sun, it picked up a ton of speed, but there was no burn off at all, much less any type of tail. And what they realized is that the earlier shots that they had of this thing, they initially thought there has to be some kind of tail on it. But as the angle and the perspective changed on the object, and as it was tracked coming back around the sun, they realized that, wow, there's no tail on this thing at all. What we thought was initially a tail is actually the length of the spaceship. So Oumuamua is supposed to look like it's cigar-shaped, basically. Which is interesting because if that shape, the cigar-shaped UFO, is obviously legendary shape that gets reported in the UFO sightings. People will often talk about seeing a craft that looks like, a stogie, basically. But what really sold him was just the fact that uh, this thing was changing trajectory on its own. And usually in the vacuum of space, if something is going to change its direction or speed, something has to directly affect it, or it's being driven. And he says he is sure, Avi Loeb is now certain, that Oumuamua was an extraterrestrial visitor. That's what he 100% believes. Which, if you're going to make this argument, these are great, great points to have, in your argument. But in relation to the fake alien invasion, now we have something. Because my first thought when I saw this story, and they're like, well, it flipped around the sun and it took off out of our solar system. My biggest thought was, man, if this is a fake story and if it's planted, at any time they want, to begin a fake alien invasion, the foundation had been laid. If tomorrow there was a story on CNN or Fox or BBC, and the story was, we are now tracking the return of Oumuamua, and there seems to be a bunch more objects with it. This may in fact be, ladies and gentlemen of planet Earth, this may in fact be an alien invasion. And there's a TED Talk on Oumuamua by Karen Meach, who was one of the original astronomers who first began tracking Oumuamua, which, like I said, it was identified in Hawaii. That's why it has a Hawaiian name. And it's a pretty cool name. It actually means the messenger. Oumuamua does, which interesting choice of name as well. But it was weird. It's like a 30 or 40-minute long TED Talk on Oumuamua, in which this Karen Meach goes on forever to explain the process of tracking it, why it's so important to the research of astronomy, because it's the first and only interstellar object that they've ever tracked that came into our solar system, went around the sun, took off upwards like crazy, beelined right between, like I said, Earth and Venus. And you'll see it's something that's clearly under its own control. It looks like exactly what Avi Loeb is saying it is. It looks like some kind of spaceship came into our solar system, checked it out, and bounced out, right? So what's really interesting about this TED Talk is you go through the whole thing, and she gets to the very end of it, and she's like, so I know you're thinking right now, is Oumuamua, an alien spacecraft? Look, I don't know. I'm open to anything. I'm an open mind, but chances are no. And I'm like, chances are no? Like, why? Like, that's the one thing I've never understood in general when it comes to ufology and those who study the skies. The universe is infinite. I mean, you understand we can't even, as human beings, we can't even wrap our mind around what infinite means, how big that is, So, and maybe I'm different, but, and you guys tell me in the comments if you feel the same way, but I've always just assumed that the universe is so big, somewhere there's not only extraterrestrial life, but life smarter than us. I don't believe by any stretch that we're just the top of the ladder and throughout the entire universe. Maybe I should have more of an ego about mankind, but I don't. I just see the flaws in mankind, and they're great, man. There are many, many flaws in mankind, and we're still killing ourselves over oil, we're still killing ourselves over drugs. I could go on and on, but my point being is we get to the very end of this, and basically she says, you know, I doubt that it's an extraterrestrial vehicle because we've never seen that before. Well, you never saw a Oumuamua before until it happened. And now it happened. And now you know of at least one time, right? At least one time that something entered our solar system. Interstellar travel. Something came in that wasn't native to us, checked it out, and bounced out. So why would she say, basically, there's not really any evidence for it, but I'm open to anything? It just seemed like the perfect planted story in the sense that you plant the story, get enough belief behind it, and then cap it and cool it off. That way you can go back to it whenever you need it. Right? Whenever you need it. Because I don't think the 3 videos that Tom DeLonge released and the DoD released, I don't think that it has the juice to move the needle either way for anybody who believes or doesn't believe. Those are just 3 grainy, horrible videos in which the only thing that's interesting about any of those videos is the stuff that's not in the video, the stuff that David Fravor explains. So I don't think those videos can move the bar at all when it comes to a sort of fake alien invasion. So why did Tom DeLonge release those? Or why did all those top of military, CIA, DoD brass surround him to get him to release those? I think we're fixing to come out with a lot of technology, and a lot of it's going to be presented by the Space Force. And I think that it's just a lot easier to kind of militarize your point of view. And that's how all 3 of those videos were presented. These are important UFO videos because we don't know much about them, and our pilots were defenseless against them. It's that whole fear machine. And that is where, you get your money for anything defense oriented. That's it. All you got to do is tell people that there's something out there that we filmed that we can't understand, and it can be really detrimental to mankind. Oh, well, hell, and here's all my money. That's how it looks. But when it comes to a fake alien invasion, it may have already begun. And what I mean by that is the planting of the Oumuamua story. Because if it hit the news today that Oumuamua, like I said, was identified to be returning with a bunch of other similar, spacecraft, essentially a fleet of Oumuamuas are headed back this way. Yeah, you'd have a lot of people that were really nervous, including me, man. I would be like, what is going on right now? What is going on? Just keep in mind, that story's out there. It's out there right now. And now there's even more credibility because a Stanford professor says there's no way that this wasn't an extraterrestrial spacecraft that's controlled by intelligent design of some kind. Something is controlling Oumuamua. Something. But I would love to know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think that this could be already the start of this kind of alien invasion? Remember, there's a reason why all these UFO stories just keep coming out and compounding on top of each other. And, now there's this Stanford, like I said, professor pushing this narrative. I mean, do you think that all of this is a part of the overall plan of disclosure? Is it a part of a fake alien invasion? What do you guys think? I have my own thoughts, obviously, but I do think out of everything new that's out there, this is the one story that I would be watching and will be watching the most, because this one involved evidence of some truly, truly bizarre stuff that seems to imply there was a visitor. There was somebody that swooped in, checked things out, blasted itself around the sun, and was off. So, what was that thing? I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts, and keep your eyes open for more and more stories about Oumuamua and UFO sightings in general. Once again, my friends, thank you all for listening to episode number 122 of the In a Crowded Room podcast. I will be back tomorrow with more. All the best.